Hello, still on the 26th of December 2020, Boxing Day. Um, this is a extra video. I've already put one out today. As I'm just getting around to sort of thinking about the the virus that has us in the state that the world is in at present, which, alright, depending on the different areas, is for the most part a major disaster on a scale never before thrust upon humanity. Even the biggest diseases that affected generations past, although seriously bad in a personal way, did not cause the disruption to regular life that this one does. Now, this one causes more disruption to regular life because of the complexities of the present life, added to 7.8 billion people on the planet from the less than a billion that there were just 200 years ago. And of course, that complexity compared to 200 years ago is enormous. It's beyond imagination of many people even 50 years ago. And that complexity is shown to be massively vulnerable to a simple virus. Because our human complexity does not comprehend the small stuff, the minute, and so it does not comprehend. So our minds do not comprehend the world overall. Many people, there are very many people who cannot even comprehend things outside their own small area where they live, village, street, or whatever. And that compounds things because they are allowed in democracies to make decisions that put certain people in charge. Now, it's not any better in any other way where leaders are imposed, but it's like, to some extent, there needs to be a way to it's so difficult because of you want everybody to be on board with whatever happens, but even then, even when you do allow that, almost half the population, in fact more than half of the population in most cases, does not actually vote. So when people vote, it's they are slightly informed. The people that do vote, that's this slightly informed, slightly more intelligent, more understanding of world views overall, but there are still a vast majority of people that do not have an overall view of anything at all, and only have a very narrow view of just where they are and what specifically affects them. And when they vote for people, they do not think about what effect a person that they choose will have on the rest of everybody. I can't think of any particular way that would make it sort of good to have a good leader. There isn't any single type of government leadership that will be good for the country. Even if you cut the numbers down to fewer people making the choices, and say you possibly the best option would be to only allow people who have a fuller understanding of the wider implications of whoever they're voting for, that might help. I think it would be worth an experiment to actually see whether that would be in any way better, and to some extent some sort of experiment like that could be done on a local scale to see what persons what the difference in people that are being elected in something like that would be against others elected the way that they are at present. Yes, but back to the COVID situation itself. Wow. Yeah, no reporting of it as an animal issue. No reporting, almost none. And certainly if you're constantly watching the main media, if you happen to see any of the individual reports about the connections with animals, you're more than likely going to forget about them as the constant flow of the other talk about the COVID and everything like that keeps piling on. So burying any sort of individual small reports. That's why the reporting about animal issues has to be regular, preferably daily, to be able to sort of open people's consciousness up. It is closed down. I've said this in the last video I was talking about, where we restrict what we know about based on whether we'd be upset if we knew about it. We can make things better, we will make things better, but do we have time to make things better? It's difficult. I could be very pessimistic and say that no, I don't think we have got time. I don't think that we will make the changes quick enough. But to have any chance of making anything better or whatever, we have to hope that we can change enough people's minds to do the right things before it gets too late, if it isn't already too late. It's a dangerous. We're already in a dangerous situation on this planet with how far we've allowed things to go. The human population itself has doubled since 1970. That's less than 50 years ago. In just 50 years, the world human population has doubled from 3 and a bit million to 7.8 billion. It's a massive difference. Did I say million for 3.5? No, 3.5 billion. 3.5 billion to now 7.8 billion. That is massive in just 50 years. Now, of the world population is beginning to slow a little bit, but it needs to more than slow. It does need to come down. Really, it does need to come down. But that's not going to happen. The best thing we can hope is that we can stabilize it to prevent it constantly getting higher. But even at the present, the United Nations present predictions are that by 2030 we will have 10 billion people on this planet. That's another 2 billion. Another 2 billion people. We're looking at just this year alone. What is it, 80 odd, just over 80 million more people on the planet than there were last year. That's taking into account births and deaths. So if you think we can maintain having an extra 100, it's close to 100 million people every year, creating, what's that? If so, that's say 10 million people. Cities just popped up in 1 year. So you put it like that. Just think that's 10. That would be more than 10. Well, based on the 81 million, that would be 10 London cities that have just occurred this year. 10 London-sized cities. Now, obviously, with them spread out amongst hundreds of thousands, maybe up to 1 million towns and cities and whatever, it's not looking at it in the individual size, but it's the growth of every one of those places. And the growth means destruction of countryside habitat and increased farming. More than anything else, increased farming, because the land cannot sustain the numbers of humans that need to have that land farmed. We are already closing to half of all the land mass being farmed. That's nearly half of all Earth, all the Earth's land mass created to farm. Now, even if our populations grow, if we were to just take out just the animal farming alone, only the animal farming, because that sector is so massive, so big, that just taking that out alone would reduce the amount of farmed land on Earth from that 50% to down below 20% of all land. That's just removing that. At the moment, that does not seem like it will happen. It doesn't seem like it will happen. But drastic things happen when emergencies are created. And as like this pandemic has, the emergency measures have upset lots of people. Reducing farming, particularly of animals, may upset a lot more. But the animal farming is worse than the pandemic. It is worse because animal farming is an intrinsic cause of this pandemic and all viruses and all our major illnesses. Apart from the catastrophic environmental damage being done to this country, to the world. This is not difficult to understand. It only becomes difficult when people will argue against it, saying, no, it is not. This is and they will throw it out just to no, this is not, without ever looking at the science, at the actual facts. And even if just the actual perception for anybody, if you just walk or drive outside your town anywhere, almost anywhere anyway, your actual countryside, for the majority of you, when you go outside your town city, is pure farmland. And that's flat fields with little vegetation, well, no vegetation on natural fields at all, and very little vegetation between and around them. You don't have to look. You think of the size of your town, and the actual amount of land that would feed all the people in your town, and you would be looking at maybe, well, less than half of what you've got there now, what the actual farmland now, if there is no animal farming. Because of, although a lot of the times you won't see animals in the fields, most of them now have become factory farms, so there are by far fewer out in the fields than there ever used to be. So you are seeing just empty fields, and the majority of those quite a large proportion of those empty fields are also growing crops that will be going to feed those animals. So you've not got just whatever fields there might be with animals or whatever's wherever they are kept and whatever, but lots of the crops that are being grown to feed animals that then will be consumed by humans. This simple logic. This isn't. The science is there. The science is proven. The science is obvious. But just a perception to understand that if you've got a field of animals, that it's not them animals are not going to be only feeding on the grass or whatever on that field. They never are. They are going to be getting extra foods from fields all around them, farmed by humans. This is why farming of animals is the biggest contributor to the destruction of our environment, the climate increases, the climate change that's occurring. There is no difficulty in understanding that. Yep. Well, we'll leave it at that, and I'll think of some things for you to connect to. You'll see some things under my other videos anyway, but I'll add things here as well. Please take notice, come on. We all want to get back to some fun. I mean, that's been another thing here, really. I always see it sound serious and probably sad and whatever, but I'm not. Far from it. I'm really, really happy, and I'm happy because I know that I'm not contributing to the harm that is done to animals. I'm not contributing mostly to the environmental damage that is happening, and I'm doing whatever I can to prevent that. And that is quite fun and relieving. I'm sure that if I was ignoring that, especially if I knew it and I was ignoring it, that it would depress me by far more. But no, I'm happy, and we should all be happy. But we must not, even if we're happy, we should never forget what is happening to billions of animals the world over that we are causing. Be happy, be really happy, because this world is a joy. We must end animal agriculture though. Thank you.